So the taxpayer is now on the hook twice. First, because Australians have been put at greater risk of crime, and second, because just to reduce this risk, an extra $255 million will now be spent. Speaking of spending money in response to every problem, Labor's now trying to buy its way out of the problem with foreign criminals released into the community after the High Court's ruling a fortnight back.
That's my style. I hope you've noticed that.
Today's joint announcement by Home Affairs Minister Claire O'Neill and her offsider, the Immigration Minister Andrew Giles, and two uniformed officers, the heads of the AFP and Border Force today, was meant to make the government look tough and in control.
Down. No. Can we have order, please? Can we have a bit of order? I intend to run an orderly government, and it starts here, so behave.
Now, in reality, it just emphasised how the government's been scrambling to respond to a crisis it should have anticipated and dealt with in advance. As my colleague Andrew Clennell reported today, here's Minister O'Neill making excuses for the government on the 19th of November.
You knew this could happen in June, though, didn't you, or did you?
We knew that there was a High Court action on foot. We knew that it was 20 years of legal precedent, and we were advised that it was likely that the Commonwealth would win the case, that is, allow us to do what we wanted to do, which is keep these people in detention.
Minister, who advised you were likely to win, and how recently did you receive that advice?
Well, we received that advice from the Department of Home Affairs, who tell us what chances we have of success and failure in each legal case. But I do need you to understand that
when did you receive that advice?
I do need you to understand that our department is one of the most litigated against departments of the Commonwealth. I do need you to understand.
I do need you to understand.
I do need you to understand that
I'm a bad liar.
But as Clennell revealed today, well before the minister claimed the government thought it would win the case, there was actually a flurry of secret emails between our officials and officials in the United States using the Prime Minister's official visit as leverage, showing how desperate the government was to get the foreign criminal. This is the one who was the subject of the original High Court action. This is the child rapist, relegated to a third country, so there'd be nothing then to adjudicate in front of the High Court, and the government could avoid an adverse judgment. Clennell reported one Home Affairs email, and I quote, "The Minister views this case of the utmost importance and wishes all avenues, including difficult ones, progressed. I think a further discussion is warranted on an approach to Bangladesh and third country options for engagement." Now, the kindest thing that can be said about Minister O'Neill is that she's been far from straight here with the Australian people.
We'll find you, O'Neill. I'm sorry, that came across super creepy, okay? We will find you, though.
The bottom line is, though, that the government did know this was a problem coming down at them like a freight train and failed to do what they should have done, namely draft in advance legislation to keep foreign criminals in immigration detention, or better yet, throw them out of the country. Instead of the belated, after the event, only because the opposition forced them into doing it, option of mandatory reporting and ankle bracelets.
And we still do not know whether they are being monitored.
But with criminals still out on the streets despite that legislation now 10 days ago. So the taxpayer is now on the hook twice. First, because Australians have been put at greater risk of crime, and second, because just to reduce this risk, an extra $255 million will now be spent, or about $1 million per foreign criminal. Doesn't even include all the welfare and the housing support and all of that.
A Labor government will always look for ways in which we can provide assistance to those in need. We'll do so, of course, though, in a context
The context here is we don't want to add to any inflationary pressure.
Because this is a government and a minister that were asleep at the wheel. Compounding this ongoing shambles is the sneakiness of announcing just moments after O'Neill left that media conference today that the stood-down Home Affairs boss, Mike Pizzullo, has now been sacked by the Albanese government.
You're fired.
Because what happened here was that O'Neill, the Home Affairs Minister, wrapped up her press conference, scampered out of the room, and then puts out the media release that the Home Affairs Secretary was sacked. Now, if she was a minister worthy of the name, she would have released that information in the room at the press conference and taken questions on it. That she wasn't able to do that, couldn't do that.
I do need you to understand that
I'm a bad liar.
That she wasn't able to do that, couldn't do that, amplifies her lack of horsepower and indeed her courage. I don't think she's up for the job. I don't think Australians think she's up for the job, nor is Andrew Giles.
This is standard procedures.
And it's about as gutless as the way this government operates generally. We've got the issue of the Prime Minister. We have those Australian naval personnel injured by a Chinese warship on the Tuesday. The government keeps quiet about it. The Prime Minister goes to APEC, meets with President Xi.
People were saying that we have a handsome boy coming from Australia.
And then only when he's on the plane on the way home do we find out about what happened to our naval divers. Now, Mike Pizzullo might have been indiscreet, texting power brokers outside of the government, but I bet many of the recent mistakes might have been avoided if this tough on borders bureaucrat had still been at his post.
I have put forward a positive, clear plan for a better future for our country. And I have shared the two principles that will drive a government that I lead. No one left behind, because we should always look after the disadvantaged and the vulnerable. But also no one held back, because we should always support aspiration and opportunity. That is what my government will do. That is the what, but the how is also just as important, because I want to bring Australians together. I want to seek our common purpose and promote unity and optimism, not fear and division.
I'm a bad liar.
I do need you to understand